The crack of bone echoed through the ballroom before the screaming started. Caroline's right hook sent Park Min-suk sprawling, champagne and blood mixing on white marble, while 500 witnesses froze in collective shock. Lee Ji-hyun, Seoul's Shadow King, watched this curvy American stranger drop a man twice her size and knew instantly that his carefully ordered criminal empire was about to be destroyed by a woman who looked like a goddess and fought like vengeance incarnate. Welcome to Black and Soul TV. Please like, share, and subscribe. Min-suk scrambled to his feet, rage contorting his handsome features. His designer suit was spotted with blood, his split lip already swelling. Caroline, what the hell is wrong with you? The American psycho finally snapped. He spoke in English, loud enough for the international crowd to hear. Someone call security. This woman is clearly unstable. Caroline's laugh was bitter and beautiful. She responded in flawless Korean, her accent perfect enough to make several guests gasp. Unstable? That's rich coming from the man who embezzled 3 million won from the women's shelter I founded. The money meant for abuse victims. You used it to fund your mistress's luxury apartment while I was planning our wedding. The ballroom erupted in scandalized whispers. Min-suk's face went pale beneath the blood. You have no proof. Just the delusions of a scorned woman who can't accept that I upgraded. Caroline pulled out her phone with deliberate calm. I have bank statements, wire transfers, text messages between you and your accountant discussing how to hide the money, and surveillance footage of you meeting with the shelter's board members you bribed to look the other way. She held up the screen so nearby guests could see. I also have photos of the apartment lease in your name and credit card receipts for jewelry you definitely never bought me. The color drained completely from Min-suk's face. Security was approaching, but Caroline wasn't finished. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to something cold and lethal. You stole from women trying to escape abusive men. You became exactly what they were running from. So before you have me arrested for assault, know that I've already sent everything to the prosecutor's office, 3 major news outlets, and your company's board of directors. By morning, you won't have a career, a reputation, or your freedom. She turned on her heel and walked toward the exit, every eye in the ballroom tracking her movement. Her hands were shaking with adrenaline, her knuckles throbbing, but she kept her head high until she pushed through the doors into the cool night air. That's when she heard the voice. Smooth, deep, speaking Korean with an authority that made her spine straighten instinctively. That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever witnessed at one of these gatherings. Caroline spun to find a man leaning against the building's stone facade, partially hidden in shadow. He stepped into the light from the entrance, and her breath caught despite herself. He was devastating. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His face was all sharp angles and intense dark eyes that studied her with unsettling focus. But it was the aura around him that made her pulse spike. Danger wrapped in expensive tailoring. Power that didn't need to announce itself. Lee Ji-hyun had watched her through the ballroom windows, unable to look away. Now, up close, she was even more captivating. Rich brown skin that glowed in the ambient light, curves that made his hands itch to touch, and eyes that held both vulnerability and steel. She was breathing hard from the confrontation, her full chest rising and falling, and he forced himself to focus on her face before his thoughts went somewhere inappropriate for a first meeting. Who are you? Caroline asked in English, suddenly aware she was alone with a stranger who radiated the kind of authority that made grown men nervous. Ji-hyun smiled slightly. Someone who appreciates thorough preparation. You didn't just punch him on impulse. You came here tonight specifically to destroy him in front of Seoul's elite. He switched to English, his accent minimal. Smart. Public humiliation hits harder than legal consequences for men like Park Min-suk. Caroline studied him warily. You didn't answer my question. Lee Ji-hyun. He offered his hand. I own several businesses in Seoul. Import, export, real estate, private security. The way he said it made it clear these were polite euphemisms for something darker. She didn't shake his hand. Caroline Bennett. And I'm not looking for whatever you're selling. I'm not selling anything. Ji-hyun lowered his hand, but didn't step back. I'm offering assistance. Park Min-suk has connections. He'll try to retaliate, discredit you, maybe worse. You just made a very public enemy. I can handle myself. Obviously. His gaze dropped to her bruised knuckles, and something possessive flickered in his eyes. But handling one drunk embezzler is different from handling his family's legal team, his business partners, and the people he'll pay to make your life difficult. Why do you care? Caroline crossed her arms, partly defensive, partly to stop herself from shivering. The night air was cold against her bare shoulders. Ji-hyun shrugged out of his jacket and draped it over her shoulders before she could protest. The gesture was smooth, practiced, and the jacket was warm from his body heat. It smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him. Because I respect anyone with the courage to punch corruption in the face. And because I have resources that could ensure Park Min-suk goes to prison instead of buying his way out of consequences. What's the catch? Nothing's free, especially not in Seoul. The catch is you let me buy you coffee tomorrow. 10 a.m. There's a cafe near Gyeongbokgung Palace. Cafe Magnolia. We'll discuss how to make sure your evidence actually sticks. Caroline should have said no. Every instinct screamed that this man was dangerous, that getting involved with him would complicate her already messy life. But there was something magnetic about him, something that made her want to lean closer instead of pulling away. And practically speaking, he was right. Min-suk had family money and connections she couldn't fight alone. One coffee. She met his intense gaze without flinching. But I'm keeping the jacket until then. Insurance that you're not just some creep who follows women out of galas. Ji-hyun's smile was devastating, warm, and slightly wicked. Keep it as long as you want. It looks better on you anyway. The next morning, Caroline arrived at Cafe Magnolia 15 minutes early, telling herself it was strategic positioning, not eagerness. The cafe was tucked into a traditional Hanok building, all wood beams and paper screens, serving modern coffee in a historical setting. She ordered an Americano and claimed a table near the window where she could watch the entrance. Ji-hyun arrived exactly at 10, somehow looking even more intimidating in daylight. He wore dark jeans and a black sweater that emphasized his build, and heads turned when he entered. The barista greeted him by name with a respect that suggested he was a regular or owned the place. He sat across from Caroline without preamble. Did you sleep? Not really. She'd spent the night researching Lee Ji-hyun and finding very little concrete information. Successful businessman, philanthropist, connected to half of Seoul's power players, and absolutely nothing that confirmed or denied her suspicion that he was involved in organized crime. The internet called him a ghost. Too visible to hide, too careful to expose. Neither did I. Ji-hyun ordered coffee in Korean, then switched back to English. I kept thinking about you punching Park Min-suk. Most people would have gone through lawyers, kept it quiet, avoided scandal. You chose public destruction. He deserved public destruction. Caroline wrapped her hands around her cup. He stole from women who'd already lost everything. Discretion would have protected him. Agreed. Ji-hyun leaned forward slightly. So here's what I'm offering. I have connections in the prosecutor's office, legitimate ones. I can make sure your evidence gets to someone who can't be bribed or intimidated. I also have investigators who can find additional evidence, things you might have missed. And I can ensure Park Min-suk's business partners know exactly what he did, which will destroy his company faster than any lawsuit. And in exchange? In exchange, you let me take you to dinner. Tomorrow night. Somewhere nice. Caroline blinked. That's it. Coffee and dinner? That's it. Ji-hyun's smile was disarming. I'm not asking you to owe me. I'm asking you to let me get to know you while I help put a criminal in prison. Consider it mutually beneficial. She should have been suspicious. She was suspicious. But there was something genuine in his expression, something beneath the dangerous exterior that seemed almost vulnerable. Why me? You don't know anything about me. I know you're brave enough to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. I know you're smart enough to gather evidence before acting. I know you're strong enough to throw a perfect right hook. Ji-hyun's gaze held hers. And I know that when you walked out of that ballroom last night, you looked like a queen who'd just conquered an empire. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Caroline felt heat rise in her cheeks. Most men are intimidated by women who punch people. I'm not most men, and I find it incredibly attractive. Later that evening, Caroline returned to her small apartment in Itaewon to find a package waiting. Inside was Ji-hyun's jacket, professionally cleaned and pressed, along with a handwritten note in perfect English. You said you'd keep it as insurance. I'm returning it because I want you to trust that I'll show up tomorrow. The address for dinner is below. I'll pick you up at 7. Caroline held the note, something warm and dangerous blooming in her chest. She was in trouble. The kind of trouble that came from attractive, powerful men who looked at you like you were the only person in the room. The following day brought news that Park Min-suk had been arrested. Not just questioned, arrested, based on evidence that had mysteriously appeared on the prosecutor's desk with detailed documentation and witness statements Caroline hadn't collected herself. The media was calling it the biggest embezzlement scandal of the year. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I told you I had connections. See you at 7. Ji-hyun. Caroline spent an embarrassing amount of time choosing her outfit. She settled on a deep burgundy dress that hugged her curves and made her skin glow, paired with heels that added 3 inches to her height. When Ji-hyun arrived at precisely 7, his expression made every minute of preparation worthwhile. He stared at her like she'd stolen his breath. You're stunning. You clean up pretty well yourself. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, the top button undone, looking like he'd stepped out of a magazine spread. Ji-hyun took her to a private restaurant in Gangnam, the kind of place that didn't have signs or menus, where the chef prepared whatever was fresh that day. They were led to a private room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River, and Caroline realized this wasn't just dinner. This was a statement. Ji-hyun was showing her his world. Over multiple courses of incredible food, they talked. Really talked. Caroline found herself sharing things she normally kept private. Her childhood in Atlanta, her social work degree, the idealism that brought her to Seoul 3 years ago to work with international nonprofits. The slow disillusionment when she realized how much corruption existed even in charitable organizations. Meeting Min-suk at a fundraiser, believing he was different, planning a future that shattered when she discovered his betrayal. And you stayed in Seoul, Ji-hyun observed. After everything. Caroline nodded. I built a life here. Friends, work I care about, a city I love. I wasn't going to let one lying embezzler chase me back to America. Brave. Ji-hyun's admiration was evident. Most people run from pain. You planted roots in it. What about you? Caroline turned the question around. You obviously have power in this city. How does someone become Lee Ji-hyun? His expression shifted, became guarded. My father built an empire through violence and fear. When he died, I inherited everything, including enemies and a reputation. I've spent the last 8 years trying to transform that empire into something legitimate. Businesses that operate in daylight, not shadows. Trying? The transition is complicated. Ji-hyun met her gaze steadily. Some parts of my world aren't clean yet. Some never will be completely. I won't lie to you about that. Appreciate the honesty. Caroline sipped her wine. So what are you? Businessman, philanthropist, or something else? All of the above. Ji-hyun's smile was slight. I'm a man trying to be better than his father while protecting the people who depend on me. That requires operating in gray areas sometimes. At least you're honest about the gray areas. Min-suk pretended everything was noble while stealing from abuse victims. There's a difference between necessary compromise and active cruelty. Ji-hyun's voice hardened. What Park Min-suk did was unforgivable. He didn't just steal money. He betrayed the trust of the most vulnerable people, and he betrayed you personally. The protective anger in his tone made Caroline's heart skip. They barely knew each other, but Ji-hyun's fury on her behalf felt genuine, intense, like he'd personally fight anyone who'd hurt her. After dinner, Ji-hyun walked her to his car, a sleek black Mercedes that screamed wealth and power. But instead of opening the door, he paused. Can I see you again? Not about Park Min-suk or business. Just because I want to spend time with you. Caroline knew she should be cautious. Everything about Ji-hyun screamed danger, complications, a world she didn't understand. But standing there in the glow of Seoul's lights, watching him look at her like she was precious, she couldn't bring herself to care about caution. Yes, his smile was sunrise, brilliant and warm. Tomorrow? You're persistent. I know what I want. And what I want is to know everything about you. Over the next 2 weeks, Ji-hyun pursued Caroline with focused intensity. He showed up at her office with lunch from her favorite restaurant. He texted her good morning in Korean and good night in English. He sent flowers to her apartment, not roses, but wildflowers, colorful and unconventional. He took her to hidden parts of Seoul, neighborhoods tourists never saw, street food vendors he'd known since childhood, art galleries and converted factories. Caroline's friends noticed immediately. Her coworker Michelle cornered her in the office break room. So who's the gorgeous Korean man who brings you lunch 3 times a week? And why haven't you introduced us? It's complicated. Caroline tried to deflect. Honey, men who look like that are always complicated. Michelle grinned. The question is whether he's worth the complication. Caroline thought about Ji-hyun's laugh when she beat him at arcade games in Hongdae. The way he listened when she talked about her work, asking thoughtful questions, offering genuine solutions. How he'd spent an entire Saturday helping her reorganize the women's shelter's finances after Min-suk's theft had left them struggling. The protective way he watched her in public, subtle but constant, like he was cataloging threats before they could materialize. Yeah, he's worth it. By the third week, Caroline admitted to herself she was falling hard. Ji-hyun occupied her thoughts constantly. The memory of his rare smiles. The warmth of his hand on her lower back when he guided her through crowds. The intensity in his eyes when he looked at her, like she was the only person who existed. But she also noticed things that confirmed her suspicions about his world. The way people deferred to him with fear, not just respect. The phone calls he took in rapid Korean, his tone shifting to something cold and commanding. The security detail that followed them discreetly but constantly. The scars on his knuckles that suggested violence in his past. One evening, they were having dinner at a casual restaurant in Myeongdong when a man approached their table. He was young, early 20s, with the desperate look of someone making a terrible decision. He spoke in rushed Korean. "Boss Lee, I need to talk to you about the shipment. There's been a problem." Ji-hyun's expression didn't change, but Caroline felt the temperature drop. "Not now. We'll discuss this tomorrow at the office." "But boss, the Chinese are threatening to back out if we don't renegotiate terms tonight, and Kong wants to use force instead of negotiation. I thought you should know before he does something that starts a war. Tell Kong if he acts without my explicit authorization, he'll regret it." Ji-hyun's voice was quiet, deadly. "And tell our Chinese contacts I'll call them personally within the hour. Now leave." The young man bowed deeply and fled. Caroline watched Ji-hyun's jaw tighten, the careful control sliding back into place. When he looked at her, there was resignation in his eyes. "Questions?" "Just one." Caroline kept her voice steady. "How deep does your world go?" "Deep enough that I'll understand if you want to walk away." Ji-hyun didn't try to deflect or lie. "I told you parts of my business aren't clean. That includes managing people who prefer violence to diplomacy, negotiating with international partners who operate outside legal boundaries, and making decisions that keep hundreds of people employed but wouldn't survive ethical scrutiny. Are you a good man trying to operate in a bad world, or a bad man who's good at hiding it?" The question seemed to hit him physically. "I don't know anymore. I'd like to think I'm trying to do better, to build something legitimate. But the foundation I'm building on is corrupt, and some days I wonder if I'm just painting over rot instead of removing it." His honesty was brutal and somehow made Caroline trust him more. "At least you're asking the question. Min-suk never did." "I'm not Min-suk." Ji-hyun reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "I won't lie to you about who I am or what I do. If we're going to be in each other's lives, you deserve the truth, even when it's ugly." "And what are we?" Caroline's heart pounded. "In each other's lives? I don't know what we are yet. But I know I think about you constantly. I know I want to be the person you text when something good happens. I know the thought of you with anyone else makes me want to break things." Ji-hyun's grip tightened slightly. "I know I'm falling for you, and I'm terrified you'll run when you see too much of my reality." Caroline turned her hand to lace their fingers together. "I'm terrified too, but I'm not running." The kiss happened 3 days later. They'd spent the afternoon at the National Museum, and Ji-hyun walked Caroline to her apartment building as dusk settled over Seoul. They stood outside her entrance, neither wanting to say goodnight. "Thank you for today." Caroline smiled up at him. "I didn't know you were into historical artifacts." "I'm not," Ji-hyun admitted with a small laugh. "But you are, and watching you excited about ancient pottery is the best part of my week." The confession made her brave. Caroline stepped closer, close enough to feel his warmth, to see gold flecks in his dark eyes. Ji-hyun's hands settled on her waist automatically, possessively. "Caroline." Her name was a question, a warning, a plea. She rose on her toes and kissed him. His response was immediate, one hand tangling in her natural curls while the other pressed her closer. He kissed her like he'd been starving, deep and consuming and desperate. Caroline melted into him, her fingers gripping his jacket, a small sound of need escaping her throat. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ji-hyun rested his forehead against hers. "I want you." The admission was raw. "I've wanted you since the moment I saw you at that gala. But I'm trying to do this right, to not rush you into something you'll regret." "I won't regret this." Caroline pulled him down for another kiss. "Come upstairs." Ji-hyun's control cracked completely. He kissed her against her apartment door, in the elevator, down the hallway. By the time they tumbled into her apartment, clothes were already being discarded. He loved her with reverent hunger, murmuring Korean endearments she didn't understand but felt in every touch. It was intense, overwhelming, perfect. Afterward, wrapped in sheets and each other, Caroline traced patterns on his chest and felt completely content. Ji-hyun held her like she was precious, fingers tangled in her hair, and she listened to his heartbeat gradually slow. Stay? She whispered into the darkness. Always. Ji-hyun kissed her temple. If you'll have me. But peace never lasted in Ji-hyun's world. Caroline woke at dawn to find his side of the bed cold. She found him in her tiny living room, fully dressed, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid, angry Korean. His expression was thunderous. He hung up and turned to find her watching. I have to go. There's been a situation. His voice was carefully controlled, but she could see the violence simmering beneath. What kind of situation? The kind that requires my immediate attention. Ji-hyun crossed to her, cupped her face gently. I'll explain everything when I get back. Stay here today. Don't go to work. My security will watch your building. Ji-hyun, you're scaring me. Good. Be scared. Be careful. Someone's targeting my organization, and I won't risk you becoming collateral damage. He kissed her forehead. I'll call you in a few hours. Trust me. Then he was gone, and Caroline stood in her apartment wondering what she'd gotten herself into. The day passed with agonizing slowness. Ji-hyun didn't call. By evening, Caroline was climbing the walls. She tried calling him and got voicemail. She texted and received no response. The news showed nothing unusual, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was happening. At 8 p.m., her door buzzer rang. Caroline jumped, hope flaring that it was Ji-hyun. Instead, the video monitor showed a stranger. Middle-aged Korean man, expensive suit, cold smile. She didn't open the door. Can I help you? Ms. Bennett, I'm Choi Dae-young. I'm an associate of Lee Ji-hyun's. He asked me to bring you somewhere safe. Every instinct screamed danger. Caroline kept her voice steady. Call him. Let me hear his voice telling me to go with you. That's not possible right now. Boss Lee is occupied with urgent business. He sent me to collect you for your protection. Then I'll stay here until he calls me himself. Choi's pleasant expression hardened. Ms. Bennett, I'm trying to be polite, but you're coming with me one way or another. Boss Lee's rivals know about you. They're planning to use you as leverage. For your own safety, you need to come now. Caroline stepped back from the intercom and grabbed her phone. She didn't know who to call. The police? And say what? That the man she was sleeping with might be a mob boss and someone was trying to kidnap her? The decision was made for her when her apartment door crashed open. Choi hadn't come alone. 3 men poured into her apartment, moving with military precision. Caroline grabbed the kitchen knife she'd been using to make dinner and backed toward her bedroom. Stay back. She held the knife steady despite her shaking hands. Choi sighed. This is unnecessary drama. We're not going to hurt you. You're valuable alive and unharmed. Valuable for what? For making Lee Ji-hyun do exactly what we want. Choi nodded to his men. Grab her. They rushed her together. Caroline slashed with the knife, connecting with one man's forearm. He screamed and stumbled back. But the other 2 were on her, wrestling the knife away, pinning her arms. She fought like hell, screaming, kicking, but they were trained and coordinated. Someone jabbed a needle into her neck. The world swam. Caroline's last thought before darkness claimed her was that she'd never told Ji-hyun she loved him. When Caroline woke, she was in a warehouse. Cold concrete, industrial smell, single light bulbs swinging overhead. Her wrists were zip-tied to a metal chair. Her head pounded from whatever they'd drugged her with. Choi sat across from her, looking patient. Ms. Bennett, welcome back. I apologize for the crude methods, but you didn't leave us much choice. What do you want? Caroline's voice was hoarse. What everyone wants. Power, money, respect. Lee Ji-hyun has been consolidating control over Seoul's underground operations for years. He's made a lot of people very wealthy, but he's also made enemies. People who remember his father's way of doing business. People who think Ji-hyun's modernization is weakness. So this is a coup. This is a realignment of power. Choi smiled. Ji-hyun will come for you. He's already threatening to burn down half the city to find you. When he arrives, he'll agree to step down peacefully in exchange for your safety. Everyone gets what they want. Except Ji-hyun. Ji-hyun gets to keep his life and watch his American girlfriend walk away unharmed. Better than what happened to his father. The threat was clear. Caroline's mind raced through options. The zip ties were tight, cutting into her wrists. The warehouse was empty except for Choi and 2 guards. No windows she could see, 1 exit. How long have I been unconscious? 6 hours. Choi checked his watch. Ji-hyun should be here soon. He's remarkably predictable when it comes to protecting people he cares about. His one real weakness. Caroline thought about Ji-hyun's protective instincts, the way he watched over her constantly, the intensity when he'd told her he was falling for her. Choi was right. Ji-hyun would trade everything to keep her safe. He'd give up his organization, his power, probably his life, and she couldn't let that happen. You're wrong about one thing. Caroline met Choi's eyes steadily. I'm not Ji-hyun's weakness. I'm the reason he'll destroy you without mercy. Brave words for a woman tied to a chair. Not brave. Observant. I've seen how Ji-hyun operates. He doesn't lead through fear anymore. He leads through loyalty. Every person in his organization chose to follow him. They stayed when he modernized, when he reduced violence, when he prioritized legitimate business. Because he treats them like people, not disposable assets. Your point? My point is you're about to discover the difference between controlling people through fear and earning their loyalty. When Ji-hyun comes through that door, it won't be alone. It'll be with every single person who believes in what he's building. And your sad little coup will end badly. We'll see. Choi stood and walked toward the exit. If you're right, this will be quite the show. When do you think love becomes worth dying for? When you've known someone for years, or when you meet someone who changes everything in a moment? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're hooked on Caroline and Ji-hyun's story, hit that like button and subscribe to Black and Soul TV. You won't want to miss what happens next. 2 hours later, the warehouse door exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. The blast was controlled, precise, and through the smoke walked Lee Ji-hyun like vengeance incarnate. He wore all black, blood on his knuckles, murder in his eyes. Behind him came at least 20 men, armed and moving with military coordination. Choi scrambled backward. You're supposed to come alone. Negotiate. I don't negotiate with people who touch what's mine. Ji-hyun's voice was death itself. You took Caroline. There's no negotiation. Just consequences. Caroline saw Choi reach for his gun. Saw everything moving too fast. Saw Ji-hyun already moving, closing the distance between them with lethal purpose. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. But Ji-hyun didn't fall. One of his men did, stepping into the bullet's path. The rest of Ji-hyun's people opened fire. Not wild, not excessive. Controlled shots that disarmed Choi's guards without killing them. Professional, precise, and absolutely terrifying. Ji-hyun reached Choi and grabbed him by the throat. Lifted him off the ground with one hand. Where is she? Choi choked, pointed toward the back. Ji-hyun dropped him and ran, his men securing the warehouse behind him. He found Caroline still zip-tied to the chair, trying to saw through the plastic using a sharp edge on the chair itself. Their eyes met across the dim space, and Caroline saw Ji-hyun's control shatter completely. He crossed the distance and dropped to his knees in front of her, hands shaking as he pulled a knife and cut through her restraints. Are you hurt? His voice broke. Did they touch you? I'm fine. Bruises, scared, but fine. Caroline's wrists were raw and bleeding from the zip ties. Ji-hyun was examining every inch of her, checking for injuries with frantic thoroughness. I thought I lost you. He pulled her against him, hands tangling in her hair. When I got the message that you'd been taken, I nearly lost my mind. I would have burned this entire city to find you. I know. Caroline held him just as tightly. That's what Choi was counting on. Ji-hyun pulled back to look at her. What do you mean? This was never about money or power. This was about making you weak. Making you choose between your organization and me. She cupped his face. I'm sorry I became a target. No. Ji-hyun's expression was fierce. You're not sorry. You didn't choose this. Choi chose this. My world chose this. But you, he kissed her desperately. You're the only good thing in my life, and I'm not apologizing for protecting what I love. You love me? The word slipped out. Completely. Devastatingly. Hopelessly. Ji-hyun rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Caroline. I think I fell the moment I saw you punch Park Min-suk. You were magnificent and terrifying and brilliant, and I knew I'd never meet anyone like you again. I love you too. Caroline was crying now, relief and fear and overwhelming emotion. When they took me, my last thought was that I never told you. You're telling me now. That's what matters. Ji-hyun stood and pulled her up with him. Let's go home. Home turned out to be Ji-hyun's penthouse in Gangnam, 40 floors above Seoul, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. Caroline had never been here before. The space was enormous, modern, expensive, and somehow still warm. Lived in. Ji-hyun's people dispersed after confirming the penthouse was secure. Choi and his collaborators were in custody, his organization dismantled. The coup had failed spectacularly, and word was already spreading through Seoul's underground that Lee Ji-hyun's mercy had limits. Touch his woman, and there were consequences. In Ji-hyun's massive bathroom, he helped Caroline into the shower and washed her gently, cleaning the blood from her wrists, the grime from captivity. His touch was reverent, careful, like she might break. When they were both clean, he wrapped her in a soft robe and carried her to his bed. Caroline expected him to leave her to rest. Instead, he climbed in beside her and pulled her against his chest, one arm wrapped protectively around her waist. I need to hold you. His voice was rough. I need to know you're real and safe. I'm here. Caroline laced their fingers together. I'm not going anywhere. They lay there in comfortable silence, listening to the city hum far below. Eventually, Caroline spoke. What happens now? With your organization? Now I finish what I started. Ji-hyun's voice was determined. No more halfway measures. I'm cutting ties with anyone who prioritizes violence over progress. Anyone who sees people as assets instead of human beings. I've been trying to reform my father's empire while keeping everyone happy. That ends tonight. You'll make more enemies. Better honest enemies than false allies. Ji-hyun kissed her temple. And I have something worth protecting now. Someone who makes me want to be better than my father ever was. Caroline turned in his arms to face him fully. I'm terrified of your world. The violence, the danger, the constant threat. But I'm more terrified of living without you. Then don't. Ji-hyun's eyes were intense. Stay with me. Not because you're afraid, but because you want to. Build something with me. A life, a future, something real. The proposal wasn't traditional. No ring, no elaborate plan. Just raw honesty at 3 a.m. after the worst day of their lives. But it was perfect, quintessentially them. Yes. Caroline kissed him softly. Yes to all of it. Ji-hyun made love to her slowly, reverently, like he was, what's wrong is you keep leaving without explanation. You lock me in your apartment with armed guards. You make decisions about my safety without asking what I want. She finally met his eyes. I'm not a possession, Ji-hyun. I'm a person who gets a say in her own life. Understanding dawned on his face. You think I'm trying to control you, aren't you? No. Ji-hyun set down the flowers carefully. I'm trying to keep you alive. There's a difference. Then explain. Caroline crossed her arms. Where did you go this morning? What was so urgent you had to leave without waking me? I was meeting with the heads of the other organizations in Seoul. Ji-hyun's voice was steady, explaining that you're off limits. That anyone who targets you, threatens you, or even looks at you wrong will answer to me personally. I spent 4 hours in a room with men who'd happily kill me, negotiating your safety. The anger drained out of Caroline. I didn't know. How could you? Ji-hyun crossed to her slowly. I left a note because I didn't want you to wake up alone and afraid. But I didn't explain because some parts of my world are ugly, and I'm still trying to protect you from them. I don't need protection from knowledge. Caroline's voice gentled. I need to understand. When you disappear without explanation, my brain fills in the blanks with every worst-case scenario. You thought I was pulling away. The realization made Ji-hyun's expression crack. Caroline, last night wasn't just physical for me. It wasn't scratching an itch or fulfilling an obligation. It was choosing you, completely, in every way that matters. Then choose me by trusting me. Let me into your world, even the ugly parts. Don't shut me out to protect me. Ji-hyun pulled her into his arms. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm still learning how to do this. How to love someone without suffocating them with protection. And I'm learning how to be loved without assuming it's temporary. Caroline admitted against his chest. We're both broken in complementary ways. Then let's be broken together. Ji-hyun tilted her face up. No more locked doors. No more unilateral decisions. We're partners. Partners. Caroline agreed. The kiss started gentle and became heated quickly. Ji-hyun backed her toward the bedroom, and they spent the afternoon proving to each other that they were choosing this, choosing each other, choosing to build something real despite the danger and fear. By the end of the week, Caroline had essentially moved into Ji-hyun's penthouse. She kept her apartment for appearances, but her nights were spent 40 floors above Seoul in Ji-hyun's arms. They developed routines. Morning coffee together before he left for whatever mysterious business he conducted. Evening dinners where they shared their days. Nights tangled together, learning each other's bodies and hearts. Ji-hyun took her to meet his sister, Ji-woo, who ran the legitimate side of the family business. Ji-woo was brilliant, sharp, and initially skeptical of Caroline. You're the American who punched Park Min-suk. Ji-woo studied her over lunch. My brother's been different since he met you. Lighter. Is that good or bad? Good. Ji-woo's smile was genuine. He's carried our father's legacy like a burden for 8 years. You make him believe he can be something other than a crime lord's heir. I'm not trying to change him. No, you're accepting him exactly as he is. That's more powerful. Ji-woo leaned forward. But understand this. My brother's world is dangerous. People will target you to hurt him. They already have. I know. And you're staying anyway? Caroline thought about Ji-hyun's rare smiles. The way he held her like she was precious. How he listened when she talked about her work, offering solutions and resources. The protective fury in his eyes when anyone threatened her. I love him. That makes the danger worthwhile. Then welcome to the family. Ji-woo raised her glass. And fair warning, our mother is going to have opinions about everything from your relationship timeline to when you're giving her grandchildren. Meeting Ji-hyun's mother was exactly as terrifying as promised. Mrs. Lee was elegant, sharp-eyed, and completely unimpressed by Caroline's nervousness. So you're the woman who made my son rearrange his entire organization. Mrs. Lee spoke in Korean, testing Caroline's language skills. Caroline responded in careful but fluent Korean. I didn't make him do anything. He chose to pursue legitimate business. Because you made him want to be better. Mrs. Lee's smile was slight. That's power, Caroline. Use it wisely. Over traditional Korean dinner in the Lee family home, Caroline learned about Ji-hyun's childhood. How his father's violence had shaped him. The pressure to inherit at 25. The choices he'd made to transform the family business. Mrs. Lee spoke with pride about her son's success, but also sadness about the cost. He's never brought a woman home before. Mrs. Lee told Caroline as they cleared dishes. You must be special. He's special to me. Good. Because my son loves with his whole heart. If you're not serious, walk away now before he's in too deep. Caroline met her gaze steadily. I'm serious. I love him. Then you have my blessing. And my warning. This life isn't easy. There will be danger, judgment, people who see you as a weakness to exploit. Can you handle that? I've already been kidnapped, drugged, and held hostage. Caroline's smile was wry. I think I can handle it. Mrs. Lee laughed, warm and approving. You'll do just fine. 2 months into their relationship, Caroline faced her first real test of belonging in Ji-hyun's world. There was a gathering of Seoul's underground leadership at a neutral venue, and Ji-hyun wanted her there as his acknowledged partner. You don't have to come, he told her while helping her into an emerald evening gown. These events are performative and occasionally hostile, which is exactly why I should be there. Caroline turned so he could zip the dress. You told the other organizations I'm off limits. Now you need to show them I'm not hiding behind your protection. She was right, and Ji-hyun knew it. But walking into that gathering with Caroline on his arm was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. Every instinct screamed to keep her away from these people. These men who ruled through violence and viewed kindness as weakness. The event was at an exclusive hotel ballroom, and the attendees were exactly what Caroline expected. Dangerous men in expensive suits, their trophy wives glittering with diamonds, and an undercurrent of violence barely contained by social niceties. Ji-hyun introduced her to the other bosses with his hand possessive on her waist. This is Caroline Bennett, my partner in all things. The reactions varied. Some politely respectful, some openly skeptical. One man, older and clearly drunk, was outright hostile. This is the woman who caused all that trouble? He spoke in Korean, assuming Caroline wouldn't understand. The American who got captured and needed rescuing? Doesn't seem like much of a partner. More like a liability. Caroline responded in perfect Korean before Ji-hyun could. A liability who speaks your language, understands your culture, and spent 6 hours in captivity without revealing a single piece of information about Ji-hyun's operations. How long would you have lasted under interrogation? The room went silent. The drunk man's face purpled with rage. You dare speak to me that way? I dare speak truth to anyone, regardless of their importance. Caroline held his gaze. Respect is earned, not demanded. And dismissing people based on assumptions is how organizations fail. Ji-hyun's hand tightened on her waist, but his voice was proud when he spoke. As I said, my partner in all things. Anyone who underestimates her does so at their own risk. The rest of the evening, Caroline noticed the shift in how people treated her. Not as decoration or weakness, but as someone worth acknowledging. She engaged in conversations about business, culture, the changing landscape of Seoul's development. She was charming, intelligent, and subtly let everyone know she wasn't intimidated. In the car ride home, Ji-hyun pulled her onto his lap despite the presence of his driver. You were magnificent tonight. I was terrified. Caroline admitted against his neck. You didn't show it. You walked into a room full of criminals and commanded respect. Ji-hyun kissed her temple. I've never been more proud or more attracted to you. Flattery will get you everywhere. Good. Because I plan to spend the rest of the night showing you exactly how much I admire your courage. He made good on the promise. Multiple times. 3 months into their relationship, Ji-hyun took Caroline to Jeju Island for a long weekend. They stayed at a private villa on the coast, spent days exploring volcanic landscapes and eating fresh seafood, and nights tangled together with the sound of waves crashing outside. On their last evening, they walked along the beach at sunset. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and Caroline felt completely at peace. This was what she'd never had with Min-suk. This easy companionship, the certainty that she was loved for who she was, not what she represented. "Marry me," Ji-hyun said suddenly. Caroline stopped walking. "What? Marry me?" He turned to face her fully, and she realized this wasn't spontaneous. This was planned. "I know it's fast. I know my world is complicated. But I love you, and I want to spend my life proving it. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to argue about whose turn it is to choose dinner. I want to watch you change the world with your fierce determination and brilliant mind." He dropped to one knee in the sand, pulling a velvet box from his jacket. "I want everything with you, Caroline. Will you marry me?" The ring was stunning. A deep emerald surrounded by diamonds, set in platinum. But Caroline barely saw it. She was too busy looking at Ji-hyun's face, the vulnerability and hope and love written there. "Yes." She was crying, laughing, pulling him up to kiss him. "Yes, I'll marry you." Ji-hyun slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her breathless. The waves crashed around them. The sun set in a blaze of color, and Caroline thought this was the happiest moment of her life. They were married 3 months later in a private ceremony at a traditional Korean temple. Caroline wore a custom hanbok in deep burgundy with gold embroidery, and Ji-hyun wore formal black. Ji-woo cried through the entire ceremony. Mrs. Lee dabbed her eyes discreetly, and when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Ji-hyun kissed Caroline with such tenderness that even his hardened security team looked away. The reception was smaller than expected. Caroline's friends from the nonprofit world mingled awkwardly with Ji-hyun's associates from the legitimate and not-so-legitimate businesses. But the evening was perfect. Good food, better company, and the constant warmth of Ji-hyun's hand in hers. During their first dance, Caroline whispered against his chest, "I can't believe this is real." "Believe it." Ji-hyun held her closer. "You're mine now. Legally, officially, in every way that matters. Possessive. Always. When it comes to you, I'm completely shameless." 6 months into their marriage, Caroline stood in their penthouse bathroom staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Her hands shook as she processed the reality. She was pregnant. They were going to have a baby. Ji-hyun found her there 20 minutes later, still staring at the test. The terror on her face made him rush to her side. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" Wordlessly, Caroline handed him the pregnancy test, watched his expression shift from confusion to shock to pure, incandescent joy. "You're pregnant." It wasn't a question. "I'm pregnant." Caroline's voice shook. "I know we talked about kids eventually, but I didn't expect it to happen this fast. If you need time, if this changes things." Ji-hyun kissed her silent. "This changes everything." He dropped to his knees and pressed his face against her still flat stomach. "It changes everything because now I have even more reason to make sure the world I'm building is one worth inheriting." "You're happy?" "Happy doesn't cover it." Ji-hyun looked up at her with tears in his eyes. Terrified, ecstatic, overwhelmed, grateful. "You're giving me a family, Caroline. A real family. Not built on fear or obligation, but love." Caroline ran her fingers through his hair. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." Ji-hyun stood and pulled her against him. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure both of you know how loved you are." 9 months later, Caroline gave birth to a daughter. They named her Mi-sun, meaning beautiful goodness, a hope for what she'd bring into the world. She had Ji-hyun's dark eyes and Caroline's rich skin tone and wild curls, perfect and tiny and completely adored. Ji-hyun stood in the hospital room holding his daughter for the first time, and Caroline watched her dangerous, powerful husband transform into something soft. He cradled Mi-sun like she was made of glass, whispering promises in Korean about protecting her, loving her, giving her a better world than the one he'd inherited. Caroline, exhausted from labor but unable to look away, felt her heart overflow. This was her family, built from chaos and danger and impossible love, real in ways she'd never imagined. 1 year later, Caroline stood on their penthouse balcony in the early morning light, cradling Mi-sun against her chest. The baby made small sleeping sounds, and Caroline's heart felt too full for her chest. Below them, Seoul glittered with infinite possibility. Above them, the sky lightened from black to navy to the first hints of rose and gold. Strong arms wrapped around them both from behind. Ji-hyun rested his chin on Caroline's shoulder, one hand gentle on their daughter's head, surrounding both his girls with warmth and protection. What are you thinking about? He asked softly. How far we've come. Caroline leaned into his solid warmth. 2 years ago, I punched my ex-fiancée at a charity gala and thought my life was over. Now I have a husband who loves me, a daughter who's perfect, and a purpose I never imagined. You gave me everything. Ji-hyun corrected gently. You taught me that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about choosing the right person to stand with. You taught me that love doesn't make you weak. Caroline turned her head to kiss his jaw. It makes you willing to fight for what matters. Mi-sun stirred in her arms, making the small sounds that meant she'd wake soon. Ji-hyun kissed Caroline's temple, then their daughter's head, and the simple domesticity of the moment felt more precious than all the power and danger in the world. Caroline had come to Seoul running from a man who'd betrayed her. She'd found refuge in anger and eventually found herself. She'd punched corruption in the face and caught the attention of Seoul's most dangerous man. She'd fallen in love despite fear, survived kidnapping despite terror, and built a family despite every reason to run. The woman who'd needed rescuing had become a queen who ruled beside a king. The stranger at a gala had become a wife, a mother, a partner in an empire being transformed from shadows into light. She'd stopped running and started building. She'd found exactly where she belonged, beside the man who'd given her not just safety, but a kingdom to rule together. A love that conquered trauma, danger, and fear. A future that stretched bright and impossible ahead of them. Ready to face another day? Ji-hyun asked with a smile in his voice. Caroline looked at their reflection in the window. 3 people instead of 2 lonely individuals. A family instead of an arrangement. With you always. If you enjoyed the story, please like and comment your favorite part. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button.